The morning at the small cafe moved quietly until a large man deliberately slammed into a corner table. Coffee splashed across the shirt of the man sitting there. Laughter erupted. A few customers joined in like it was harmless fun. The man in the wet shirt did not yell. He did not argue. He stood slowly and locked eyes with the one who hit him. That stare cut through the noise. The entire cafe went silent in a single breath. No one moved. No one spoke. Who was this man? The man in the corner booth had arrived early. He chose that table for a reason. His back was to the wall. He could see the entrance and the entire room without turning his head. Old habits stayed long after the need for them disappeared. Marcus Wade sat with his hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. He wore a faded gray Henley and jeans that had seen better days. Nothing about him suggested he wanted conversation. His face carried the kind of stillness that came from years of watching and waiting. 44 years old, lean, unremarkable to anyone who did not know where to look. His dark brown skin was smooth across his jaw, and his close-cropped hair was showing the first flecks of gray at the temples. The watch on his left wrist was not the kind sold in shopping malls. It was military issue, scratched, functional, the sort of thing a man kept because it had been through what he had been through. He was not reading. He was not scrolling through his phone. He was simply there, present. The cafe was small and locally owned, tucked into a quiet block on Hargrove Street in the Ridgewood neighborhood, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the pastries came from a bakery 2 blocks away. Marcus liked it because it was quiet in the mornings. He could think here. He could breathe here. He could forget for a little while that the world had once demanded everything from him and that he had given it willingly. His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced down. A text from his daughter. She was 12. Her name was Zara. The message was short. Don't forget. Pick up at 3:15. Love you, Dad? He typed back with one hand. I won't forget. Love you too. He set the phone down and looked out the window at the quiet street where a few people walked past on the sidewalk and a stray cat stretched in a patch of sunlight near the curb. Zara was the reason he was still here. She was the reason he had walked away from everything else. Her mother had died when she was 6. Cancer, fast and brutal, the kind that announced itself quietly and then consumed everything in its path, like a fire moving through dry grass. Marcus had been overseas when it started. By the time he made it home, the doctors were already talking about months instead of years. He remembered walking into the hospital room and seeing Denise propped up on pillows, thinner than she had been when he deployed, her brown skin ashen, her smile still warm despite everything her body was doing to betray her. She had looked at him and said, I waited for you. And he had broken right there in the doorway because he knew she had been waiting to say goodbye. He left the service 3 weeks after the funeral. No one argued. No one asked him to stay. They understood. Raising a daughter alone was harder than anything he had done in uniform. There were no clear objectives, no teams, no backup. Just him and a little girl who cried in the middle of the night and asked questions he did not know how to answer. Where did Mommy go? Why can't she come back? Does she still love us? He answered every question as honestly as he could and held her when honesty was not enough. He learned. He adapted. He became the kind of father who braided hair before school and knew the names of all her friends and showed up to every soccer game at Clearview Park even when he was exhausted. He learned to make her favorite meals from the recipes Denise had written on index cards and kept in a small wooden box on the kitchen counter. He learned to sew buttons back onto school uniforms and to sit through animated movies he had no interest in because Zara wanted company. He learned that being strong did not always mean being hard. Sometimes it meant being soft enough to let a 12-year-old girl paint your fingernails because it made her laugh. The cafe started to fill. It was Saturday morning. Families came in with strollers, College students claimed tables and spread out laptops. A line formed at the counter. The noise level rose, voices overlapped, an espresso machine hissed. Someone laughed too loud. Marcus did not mind. He had learned to filter sound, to separate what mattered from what did not. He finished his coffee and considered ordering another. That was when Terrence Briggs walked in. Marcus recognized him. Everyone who came here regularly recognized Terrence. He was the kind of man who made sure you did. Tall, broad-shouldered, late 30s. He wore a leather jacket even though it was not cold enough for one. He moved through the cafe like he owned it. Loud, entitled, the kind of person who believed the world owed him space and attention simply because he demanded it. His dark skin was clean-shaven, his head bald by choice, and his build suggested someone who spent time in a gym but had never been tested outside of one. Terrence had a habit of pushing boundaries. He cut in line. He spoke over people. He made jokes at the expense of others and expected them to laugh along. Most people did. It was easier than confrontation. Marcus had seen him before. He had watched the way Terrence treated the staff, the way he leaned too close when he talked to women, the way he made himself the center of every room he entered. Marcus had stayed out of it. It was not his business. He was just there for the coffee. Terrence walked past the counter without ordering. He scanned the room. His eyes landed on Marcus. Something shifted in his expression. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was the need to prove something. Marcus did not look away. He simply met Terrence's gaze and held it for a second before returning his attention to his empty mug. Terrence changed direction. He walked toward the corner booth. His stride was deliberate, confident. He moved between tables without excusing himself. A woman with a laptop had to pull her chair in to let him pass. She did not say anything. Terrence did not acknowledge her. Marcus saw him coming. He did not move. He sat perfectly still. His hands stayed on the table. His breathing stayed even. He knew what was about to happen. He had seen men like Terrence before, men who mistook silence for weakness, men who needed to dominate because they had nothing else. Terrence reached the table. He did not stop. He turned his body at the last second and slammed his hip into the corner of it. The impact was hard, intentional. The table lurched. Marcus's mug tipped over. Coffee spilled across the surface and dripped onto his lap. The liquid was still warm. It soaked through the denim and spread across his thigh. Terrence stepped back and looked down at the mess. He grinned. It was not the kind of grin that suggested apology or embarrassment. It was the grin of someone who had just done exactly what he intended to do. "Whoa," Terrence said, his voice carrying across the cafe. "My bad, man. Didn't see you there." The lie was obvious. Everyone within 10 feet had seen what happened. Terrence had walked directly into the table. There was no accident, no mistake, just a man testing another man to see what he would do. Marcus looked down at the coffee spreading across his jeans. He looked at the puddle forming on the floor. Then he looked up at Terrence. He did not speak. He simply waited. Terrence's grin widened. He glanced around the room. A few people were watching now. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked curious. One man near the window had his phone out. Terrence fed off the attention. He turned back to Marcus and shrugged. "You should probably clean that up," Terrence said. He made no move to help. He made no move to leave. He just stood there watching, waiting for a reaction. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. It was not anger, not yet. It was the thing that came before anger. The quiet calculation of whether a situation was worth the cost of responding. He thought about Zara. He thought about the promise he had made to himself when Denise died. He would be there. He would stay out of trouble. He would not let old instincts pull him into places he could not afford to go. But this was not about instinct. This was about dignity. about the line between keeping the peace and allowing yourself to be disrespected in front of a room full of strangers. Marcus had walked away from a lot of fights. He had swallowed a lot of pride. He had learned that being a good father sometimes meant being the bigger man, even when it hurt. This felt different. This was not a stranger bumping into him by accident. This was not a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, public, a challenge wrapped in a false apology. And if he did nothing, Terrence would do it again, to someone else, to someone who could not handle it the way Marcus could. He stood, slowly, carefully. He did not brush the coffee off his jeans. He did not reach for napkins. He simply rose to his full height and looked Terrence in the eye. Marcus was not as tall, not as broad, but something in the way he stood made Terrence take a half step back before he caught himself. The cafe went quiet. The conversations did not stop all at once. They faded one by one. People noticed the stillness, the tension. The two men facing each other in the corner. Even the espresso machine seemed to pause. Marcus spoke. His voice was low, controlled, each word deliberate. "You need to walk away." Terrence blinked. He had expected anger. Maybe shouting, maybe a shove. He had not expected this. The calm, the certainty. He recovered quickly. He forced a laugh and looked around the room again. "Or what?" Terrence said. He spread his arms wide like he was inviting applause. "You going to make me?" Marcus did not answer. He just waited. His hands stayed at his sides. His weight stayed balanced. He was not threatening. He was not aggressive. He was simply present, immovable. A wall that Terrence had not expected to hit. The choice was Terrence's now. He could walk away. He could de-escalate. He could laugh it off and leave Marcus alone. But men like Terrence did not walk away. Not when people were watching. Not when walking away looked like losing. Terrence stepped closer. He invaded the space between them. Close enough that Marcus could smell the cologne. Close enough to make most people uncomfortable. Close enough to force a reaction. Marcus did not move. He did not flinch. He stood exactly where he was and looked at Terrence with the kind of patience that came from knowing how this would end. One way or another, it was just a matter of time. The space between them felt smaller than it was. Terrence stood close enough that Marcus could see the vein pulsing in his neck. The posture was meant to intimidate, to force a step back, to establish dominance through proximity alone. Marcus did not move. His feet stayed planted. His shoulders stayed level. He had been in worse positions with worse men in worse places. This was a coffee shop in the middle of a Saturday morning. This was not Fallujah. This was not Kandahar. This was just a man who had never learned the difference between strength and bullying. Terrence's jaw tightened. He had expected something by now. A shove, a raised voice, some kind of escalation he could feed off. Instead, he got nothing. Just a man standing in front of him with the kind of stillness that came from absolute certainty. It threw him off balance. He covered it with a sneer. "You deaf or something?" Terrence said. His voice was louder now, meant for the audience. "I asked you a question." Marcus let the question hang in the air. He was counting in his head, not out of anger, out of training. He was measuring distances, calculating angles, identifying exits. It was automatic. Muscle memory. The kind of thing that happened without conscious thought when a situation moved from uncomfortable to potentially dangerous. He thought about Zara. She would be at home right now. Probably still in her pajamas watching cartoons with Nia, who had slept over last night. Probably eating cereal and laughing at something only 12-year-olds found funny. She did not know what her father had done before she was born. She knew he had been in the army. She knew he had traveled. She knew he did not like to talk about it. That was enough. She did not need to know the rest, and she did not need a father who got arrested for getting into a fight in a cafe. She did not need a father who let his pride override his judgment. She needed a father who picked her up at 3:15, who made dinner, who helped with homework, who showed up. Marcus spoke again. His voice was quieter this time. Quieter, but somehow harder. Apologize and leave. That's the last time I'm going to say it. The words landed like stones. Terrence blinked. His sneer faltered for half a second before he forced it back into place. He looked around the room again. More people were watching now. The college student near the window had his phone up. The camera was pointed at them. Terrence saw it. He fed off it. He turned back to Marcus and laughed. "You think you're tough?" Terrence said. He leaned in another inch. His breath was warm against Marcus's face. "You think sitting there in your little corner makes you special?" Marcus's expression did not change. He was reading Terrence now, the way he stood, the way he distributed his weight, the way his right hand kept flexing into a loose fist. Terrence was working himself up, building momentum, convincing himself that whatever came next was justified. Marcus had seen it 100 times. The escalation pattern was predictable. First the insult, then the invasion of space, then the physical contact, then the violence. The air in the cafe had changed. The conversations had stopped completely now. Even the barista behind the counter had gone quiet. She was young, early 20s. Her name tag said Keisha. She stood frozen with a pitcher of steamed milk in one hand and her phone in the other. She looked like she wanted to call someone but did not know who. Her dark eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and concern, and her box braids hung over one shoulder as she stood completely still. An older man sitting near the door stood up. He was in his 60s, gray beard, flannel shirt over a broad chest that spoke of decades of physical labor. He took a step toward them and then stopped. His wife grabbed his arm. She shook her head. He sat back down. No one else moved. No one intervened. They just watched. Some of them looked uncomfortable. Some of them looked fascinated. It was the same in every crowd. People wanted to see what would happen, but they did not want to be part of it. Terrence noticed the attention. It fed him. He straightened up slightly and raised his voice another notch. "You know what your problem is?" Terrence said. He was performing now, playing to the room. "You think you can just sit there and ignore people? You think you're better than everyone else?" Marcus let him talk. Words were just noise. They did not matter. What mattered was what came after the words. What mattered was the moment when Terrence decided that talking was not enough. That moment was coming. Marcus could feel it building. He could see it in the way Terrence's shoulders tensed, in the way his breathing quickened, in the way his eyes flicked down to Marcus's chest like he was choosing a target. "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Marcus said. His tone was flat. "I just want to be left alone." Terrence's face flushed. The statement was simple, honest. And somehow it made everything worse. Because it was not a threat. It was not a challenge. It was just a man stating a boundary. And boundaries were the thing Terrence could not tolerate. "Left alone," Terrence repeated. He said it like the words were ridiculous, like the idea of personal space was a joke. "You come to a public place and you want to be left alone." He took another step forward. Now they were almost chest to chest. Marcus could feel the heat coming off Terrence's body, could see the small cut on his jaw where he had shaved too close, could smell the coffee on his breath mixed with something sharper, maybe bourbon, maybe whiskey. Day drinking would explain a lot. Marcus's hands stayed at his sides, loose, relaxed, not clenched into fists, not raised in defense, just there, ready. He was running through scenarios in his head. If Terrence swung, where would it come from? If Terrence grabbed, what would be the cleanest way to break it? If Terrence charged, how to redirect the momentum without causing permanent damage? He did not want to hurt this man. He just wanted this to be over. "Last chance," Marcus said. The words were barely above a whisper, but they cut through the silence like a blade. "Walk away." Terrence's right hand came up fast. He shoved Marcus's shoulder with the heel of his palm. It was not a punch, not yet. It was a test, a provocation, an invitation to escalate. Marcus absorbed the impact. His body rocked back slightly and then settled. He did not shove back. He did not grab Terrence's wrist. He just stood there and let the moment breathe. The cafe held its breath with him. Keisha, the barista, had her phone to her ear now. Marcus could see her lips moving but could not hear what she was saying, probably calling the police. Good. Let them come. Let them sort this out. He could wait. He was good at waiting. But Terrence was not. The shove had not gotten the reaction he wanted. Marcus had not fought back, had not even flinched. It made Terrence look weak, made him look like he was picking on someone who would not defend himself. That was not the story Terrence wanted to tell. He needed resistance. He needed a fight. He needed Marcus to give him an excuse. Terrence shoved again, harder this time. Both hands against Marcus's chest. The force was real, aggressive, meant to knock him back into the wall. Marcus moved with it. He took 2 steps backward and used the momentum to create distance. His spine touched the wall. He stopped, stood, waited. "Come on!" Terrence shouted. His face was red now. Spit flew from his mouth. "Do something! Hit me! I know you want to!" Marcus did not want to. That was the thing Terrence could not understand. Marcus did not need to prove anything, did not need to win, did not need to establish dominance or save face or play to a crowd. He had already won more fights than Terrence would ever know about. He had survived things that would have broken most men. He had nothing left to prove to anyone, especially not to a drunk bully in a coffee shop. But Terrence was not done. He could not be done, not while people were watching, not while phones were recording. He had committed now. He had pushed this too far to back down. His pride would not let him. His ego would not let him. So he made the choice that Marcus had known he would make from the beginning. Terrence threw a punch. It came from his right side. A wide looping hook aimed at Marcus's jaw. Telegraphed, slow, the kind of punch someone threw when they had never been trained, when they had never faced someone who knew how to fight. Marcus saw it coming from a mile away. He had time to think, time to choose, time to decide how this would end. He could duck, let the punch sail over his head, let Terrence stumble forward off balance, walk away while he was recovering. But that would not stop this. Terrence would come again, would escalate further, would hurt someone eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not Marcus, but someone. So Marcus moved. It was not dramatic. It was not flashy. It was just precise. He shifted his weight to his left foot, turned his shoulders, slipped inside Terrence's guard as the punch passed through empty air. His left hand came up and caught Terrence's extended wrist. His right hand locked onto Terrence's elbow. Basic control holds, the kind taught in every combative's course, the kind that worked because they relied on leverage and anatomy instead of strength. Marcus rotated Terrence's arm, not hard, not fast, just firm, controlled. Terrence's body followed the movement because it had no choice. The shoulder joint only moved in certain directions. Fight it and something tore. Follow it and you stayed intact. Terrence's brain understood that even if his pride did not. In 3 seconds, Terrence was facing the wall. His right arm was pinned behind his back. His left hand was pressed flat against the brick. Marcus stood behind him, close, controlling the angle, controlling the pressure. Enough to hold, not enough to damage. Terrence struggled, his muscles tensed. He tried to push back, tried to twist free. Marcus adjusted. Small movements, tiny shifts in pressure. It looked effortless. It was not. It was the product of thousands of hours of training, of sparring, of live combat where mistakes cost lives. But from the outside, it looked like Marcus was barely trying. "Stop moving," Marcus said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You're going to hurt yourself." Terrence did not stop. He jerked his shoulder, tried to throw an elbow. Marcus increased the pressure just enough to freeze him, not enough to dislocate, just enough to send the message. Keep fighting, and this gets worse. The cafe was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Keisha stood behind the counter with her phone still pressed to her ear. The college student by the window had lowered his phone. His face was pale. The older man in the flannel shirt sat with his mouth slightly open. His wife had her hand over her heart. No one had expected this. They had expected a brawl, shouting, wild swings, maybe broken furniture. They had not expected efficiency, control. A man who moved like violence was a language he had spoken for so long that it required no thought, no effort, no emotion. Marcus held Terrence against the wall and waited. Waited for the fight to drain out of him. Waited for reality to sink in. Waited for the moment when Terrence understood that he had made a very serious mistake. Terrence stopped struggling. The fight drained out of him all at once. His muscles went slack. His breathing turned ragged. Marcus felt the shift, felt the moment when resistance became compliance. He held the position for 3 more seconds, long enough to be sure. Then he released the pressure and stepped back. Terrence turned around slowly. His face was flushed. His eyes were wide. He looked at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time, like the last 2 minutes had rewritten everything he thought he knew. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Marcus put distance between them. 2 steps, then 3. He moved to the side so he was not blocking Terrence against the wall, giving him space, giving him an exit. The stance was deliberate, non-threatening. Marcus's hands hung loose at his sides. His weight was centered. He was not pursuing, not pressing, just holding the boundary he had set. The cafe stayed frozen. Keisha still had the phone pressed to her ear. The older man in the flannel shirt had half risen from his seat again. His wife was gripping his forearm with both hands. The college student near the window had his phone down now. His thumb hovered over the screen like he was deciding whether to stop recording or keep going. Sirens cut through the silence, faint at first, then louder. Terrence's head snapped toward the sound. Panic flickered across his face. He looked at Marcus, looked at the door, looked back at Marcus. He was calculating, trying to figure out if he could leave before the police arrived, trying to decide if running would make things better or worse. Marcus shook his head once. Small movement, clear message. Do not run. Terrence stayed where he was. 2 police cruisers pulled up outside, lights flashing, no sirens now. 4 officers came through the door. They moved with the kind of careful speed that said they had been told there was an active fight, that someone might be hurt, that the situation might still be escalating. The first officer through the door was a young black woman, late 20s, her hair pulled back tight beneath her cap. Her hand rested on her belt near her radio, not on her weapon but close. Her eyes swept the room, took in the crowd, the phones, the 2 men standing near the back wall, one of them breathing hard, the other standing perfectly still. The second officer was older, 50, maybe 55. His name tag said Hammond. Dark-skinned with gray at his temples, a weathered face that had seen too many Saturday morning calls like this one. He moved slower than his partner, more deliberate. His eyes found Marcus first, held there. Something passed across his face. Recognition, maybe, or curiosity. He said something to the younger officer. She nodded and moved toward Terrence. Officer Hammond walked toward Marcus. His posture was relaxed but alert. The walk of someone who had done this enough times to know that assumptions got you hurt. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to react if he needed to. "You want to tell me what happened here?" Hammond said. His voice was calm, professional, no accusation in it. Just a question. Marcus met his eyes. He did not look away, did not fidget, did not rush to explain or defend. He just stood there and let the officer assess him. It was the same thing Marcus had been doing since Terrence walked into the cafe, reading, measuring, waiting. "He knocked over my table," Marcus said. He gestured to the corner booth. The spilled coffee was still there, dark liquid pooling on the surface and dripping onto the floor, deliberately. Then he shoved me twice. Then he took a swing. Hammond looked at the table, looked at the stain on Marcus's jeans, looked back at Marcus's face, His eyes dropped briefly to the watch on Marcus's wrist. Standard issue. The kind you could not buy in stores, the kind you earned. Hammond's expression shifted slightly. Not much, just enough. And what did you do? Hammond asked. Restrained him, Marcus said. Didn't hit him, didn't hurt him, just held him until he stopped. Hammond looked over his shoulder. The younger officer had Terrence against the wall now. Different wall, different position, but the same defeated posture. She was talking to him in a low voice, taking his ID. Terrence was cooperating. He looked like a balloon that had lost all its air. Keisha appeared at Hammond's shoulder. She still had her phone in her hand. Her voice shook slightly when she spoke. That's true, she said. She pointed at Terrence. That guy came in and went straight for him. She pointed at Marcus. Knocked the table on purpose, started pushing him. Everyone saw it. The older man in the flannel shirt stood up. His wife let go of his arm this time. He walked over to the officers with the careful steps of someone who did not want to interfere, but felt obligated to speak. She's right, the man said. His voice was rough. A lifetime of hard work or both. The big guy started it. This one here just defended himself. Didn't do more than he had to. Hammond looked at Marcus again. Really looked this time. Took in the way he stood, the way he held himself, the way his eyes tracked movement without his head turning, the watch, the faded clothes, the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. The pieces were adding up in Hammond's head. Marcus could see it happening. "You ex-military?" Hammond asked. It was not really a question, it was confirmation. Marcus nodded once. "What branch?" "Army." "How long?" 16 years. Hammond waited. When Marcus did not offer more, he did not push. He just nodded like he had gotten the answer he expected. He turned toward his partner and gave a small hand signal. She nodded back and started walking Terrence toward the door. "Am I being arrested?" Terrence said. His voice cracked on the last word. The bravado was gone. Now he just sounded scared. "You're being removed for disturbing the peace," the younger officer said. "We'll talk outside." Terrence looked back at Marcus one more time. His expression was complicated. Fear, embarrassment, maybe something like respect. He did not say anything. He just turned and walked out with the officer's hand on his elbow. Hammond watched them go. Then he turned back to Marcus. "You want to press charges?" Marcus shook his head. "You want a report filed?" Another shake. "You sure? We got witnesses. We got video, probably." Hammond glanced at the college student who was still holding his phone. "We can make a case." "I'm sure," Marcus said. "I just want to go home." Hammond studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled a card from his pocket and held it out. "If you change your mind," he said, "or if that guy comes back around, you call me." Marcus took the card, slipped it into his back pocket without looking at it. Hammond reached out and offered his hand. Marcus shook it. The grip was firm, mutual respect between two men who had both seen things they did not talk about. "Thank you for your service," Hammond said quietly. Then louder, to the room. "Anyone who recorded video of this incident, I'd appreciate it if you'd delete it. This is not entertainment. This is not content. Someone could have been seriously hurt." The college student looked down at his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, held it up to show Hammond. The video was gone. A few other people around the cafe did the same. Deleting. Confirming. Hammond nodded. "Appreciate it," he said. He looked at Marcus one more time, tipped his head slightly, then he walked out. The door closed behind him. The lights from the cruisers outside faded as they pulled away. The cafe exhaled. Conversation started again, quietly at first, then louder. People returned to their coffee, their laptops, their Saturday mornings. But the atmosphere had changed. There was a different quality to the air now, a lesson that no one had asked for, but everyone had received. Keisha came over with a towel. She handed it to Marcus without a word. He took it, wiped the coffee off the table, dropped the towel in the trash. He looked at his watch. 11:30. He had hours before he needed to pick up Zara, but he did not want to stay here anymore. Did not want to be looked at. Did not want questions. He walked to the counter. Keisha was back behind it now. Her hands were steadier. "How much for the coffee?" Marcus asked. She shook her head. "It's on the house." "I'd rather pay." She looked at him. Really looked. Then she nodded. $3.50. Marcus pulled out his wallet, gave her a 5, told her to keep the change. She smiled. Small. Genuine. "Thank you," she said, "for not making it worse." Marcus did not respond. He just nodded and turned toward the door. The older man in the flannel shirt caught his eye as he passed. Raised his coffee cup slightly. A salute. Marcus returned the nod and kept walking. Outside, the air was crisp, clean. The Ridgewood neighborhood was quiet on Saturday mornings, the kind of neighborhood where people walked their dogs and waved at each other from porches and knew which houses had the best gardens. Marcus walked to his truck, climbed in, sat behind the wheel, and looked at the cafe through the windshield. People were still inside, still drinking coffee, still living their lives. The moment had passed. Terrence was gone. The police were gone. Everything was returning to normal. Except it was not normal. Not really. Because now everyone in that cafe knew something they had not known before. They knew that silence was not weakness, that stillness was not surrender, that real strength was not about dominating others. It was about controlling yourself, about choosing not to cause harm even when you had every right to, about the discipline it takes to hold back when everything inside you is trained to strike. Marcus started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot, and drove toward home. He would shower, change his jeans, maybe make lunch. He would probably sit in the quiet of his living room for a while and let the adrenaline drain out of his system the way it always did, slowly, like water seeping through cracks in stone. And at 3:15, he would be parked outside Zara's school on Kensington Avenue, waiting like he always was, like he always would be. Because that was what mattered, not what happened in a cafe, not some drunk bully who learned a hard lesson, just being there for the one person who needed him to be. He turned on the radio, found a station playing something quiet, and drove away from the cafe like he had never been there at all.